This time on the Prop Master, well, the seemingly endless 9-month-long slog of a project that's not even a project, more like research for a project, is finally coming to an end. Hey, in all honesty, I've enjoyed every minute of this project. I'm just really surprised how many of you said that you wanted to come along and watch me do it. And the really good news is that now that we've finished this, I can actually make the templates and we can do this whole thing again, but this time you'll be able to use the templates to follow along with me and make your own jetpack. But you know, we've got to finish this up before we can do that, and there's still quite a bit to do, so we better get to work. Okay, so I thought that I was recording earlier, but I wasn't. But luckily you didn't miss much before I needed to turn the camera off for a second and grab something. So like I said, you didn't miss much. Let me catch you up to speed real quick. The first thing was that this size coming off of this piece of PVC was not as large as this size here. Hopefully you can see that. So I cut off an appropriate piece from the end of a different PVC pipe that I had, like this, and glued it on using PVC glue. And then I took that same piece, that extra one of these that I had, and I measured this size here and cut that off of one of these pieces here. So it's actually a little bit wider than the drawing, but with the drawing I was not following that exactly. I was trying to pick sizes that I thought would work and be easier to find. So I'm not too worried about the fact that the height and the width didn't measure up exactly. I mean, they're pretty similar, but this is a little bit bigger, not much. So now I just need to glue this onto the top of that. So I'll do that the same way as I glued that little piece right there on. I just take some of this primer. And I should have the door open and the fans on because this stuff's kind of harsh. I had kind of a lot of the primer there, so I had to wipe it off. And then I take some of the glue. I'm using my fingers to kind of make sure it's lined up. Now I'm just going to push down as hard as I can. Well, maybe not as hard as I can, but hard enough. Ooh, it moved. You know what I should have done, now that I have this glued on, I've got some of this. I should have cut a piece and run it through the middle there so I have some structure. In fact, I'll probably do that. Hopefully this will still work out. Actually, it doesn't seem to be in any hurry to glue on, so I might be able to do this in the right order anyway. Yeah, that's not wanting to work, so. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna measure this. Let's say about 5 1/4. And I'm gonna cut a 5 1/4 inch long piece of this, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here's our piece that I cut. I also just put a little bit of took a file and put a little bit of a bevel on there. I'm not planning on gluing this part in place because I don't think I'm going to need to. I think that's all I really need there. You know what? I have plenty of stuff, so I think I am going to glue this in place because I think this is probably going to end up glued to this, so I might as well make it one good solid piece. I need a rag. Typical, making a mess. I should be wearing gloves probably. I don't work with PVC enough to know that much about this stuff, but I'm pretty sure it's not good for you. Okay, now it really holds things in place and I can give it a little bit of pressure. Okay. Now I'm going to go wash my hands and let that cure, and we'll go on from there. Okay, apologize for the fact that everything looks very different now, but there was a hailstorm coming through that I had to move all the cars into the garage, and I've had to relocate everything. I've also been kind of messing around with the piece that goes here. Initially, I was going to use this cup, but it's not quite a sharp enough angle. Also, I'm having a hard time finding cups like this, so I didn't want to just say, find a cup that would fit. So I've gone out and I've found several of these tall, skinny funnels. These are on Amazon. There's some other ones that I got from O'Reilly's. They all have slightly different angles. I think the one from Amazon, this Lumax, is probably the better shape, but the one from O'Reilly's is actually not bad either. You'll recognize it has this little smaller section at the end. I think it's just called a Flow Tool Extra Large Funnel. But the important thing is they're these very narrow funnels. The problem comes in that they're not perfectly conical. They have a tendency to be a little offset. So when you're cutting them out, you end up with these weird. It's like on one side, it's this angle. On the other side, it's not quite that angle. It's kind of frustrating. So what we're going to have to do is kind of eyeball it to get it into the right angle. And see, this one fits fine, but this one is sharp enough angle that this gets in the way. So I think the first thing we're going to do is we're going to cut this a lot shorter so we can have more wiggle room with these angles. I'm going to try to use this little pneumatic reciprocating saw to just cut this off. This is, I guarantee this is going to make the compressor go off, so get ready for a loud compressor sound. And I'm just going to, I'm not going to measure this. I'm just going to cut off a chunk. Not the cleanest cut, but it'll work. So now this gives me a little bit more room to play with these angles. There's most likely going to be some gapping at the bottom, which I'll have to fill with caulking. I think that's still going to be fine. This one's a little bit, I think, more symmetrical, but I think I like the angle, or I like the size of this one. By the way, to get this cut, I just took a hole saw and cut a 3 inches, basically a 3 1/8 hole, which is the right hole for this piece, and use that to mark, push this onto the funnel. I guess I actually have one of these funnels. Push this on here, measured that distance, made sure it was the same all the way around. Then I was able to scribe that and use that to cut it out. For the height, I just measured this distance from the trying to make sure you can see this distance right here. I measured that and cut that much of that off. Now I just have to decide which one of these I want to use. Okay, I've decided to go with the Amazon one, the one that's I think less symmetrical, but has less of an angle between this bottom size and the top size. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of eyeball this, because I'll never be able to get it perfect. Let's see. This is going to help. I think I'm going to swap this 180. The top's not perfectly level, so that's throwing me off. So to me, that looks pretty good left to right. Front to back, it's a sharper angle in the front and flatter in the back. So I think what I'm going to do is just raise it up in the back. Trying to hide all the stuff in the background that makes it hard to see what I'm working on here. So that'll hold it there. So now I just need to put a spacer in the back, maybe 1/8 of an inch. Let me go find some paper that I can cut and use as a spacer real quick. Okay, I just got a piece of paper that I've folded over a few times and then taped with the gaffer tape so that it won't spread apart. I'm gonna need this back. I think that's just a little bit much. I'm gonna unwrap this for a second. So I just unwrapped this, kind of unfolded it a little bit and cut this section off and refolded it. That's pretty close. So again, the top's throwing it off. I think that's close enough. I almost want to take a little bit more off, but I don't know if I can take enough of that, or I think it's gonna be too much. Maybe I can just press it down a little bit. So I think what I'm gonna do is, how do I want to do this? I don't want this to be permanent. So I think I'll just use that as a temporary spacer, and I can kind of fix this with some more tape. I'm trying to decide what the best way to attach this is. Gluing it obviously not going to be the best choice because right now it's half of it's up off the surface. Oh, I should have thought. Okay, I think I know what I'm going to do now. But I'm going to have to go to the store real quick. Be back in a minute. Okay, I'm back, and let's see if I can rearrange this a little bit. Okay, I'm back, and here's my brilliant idea. Spray foam. I think I can fill this with spray foam and get around all of the little pieces, and that should kind of hold this in place. I may have to go back in afterwards and try to get some kind of glue in here, maybe some CA glue, and maybe some caulk to fill the back end. We'll see. Just kind of, playing this by ear for the moment. First thing I want to do is try and secure this all the way around as best I can. Nothing super secure, but I don't want the spray foam to force this thing apart. It should have ample opportunity to come out the top or go down the PVC pipe, so it shouldn't have too much pressure forcing it apart. But I also don't want running, out the sides anywhere. Okay. And I want to not obviously spray this into the PVC. I want to spray it between that PVC piece and this piece. So find a gap there that I can put this into, and let's see how this goes. So let's see how much of a mess this makes and if this works. Oh, I can see a spot where it's, hold on, I need a rag. I left a hole and it found it. I shouldn't do that. That's pretty much going to destroy this rag, but this is and I need to fill that with something because this stuff will continue to expand and is nasty stuff. It gets quite hard, but it sticks really well. So, and unfortunately, it's not the fastest drying stuff. So I'll probably need to wait at least 24 hours and then we'll take a look at it. I could have sped it up a little bit with some water, but I can't really get in all around it. So I think the best thing to do is just wait 24 hours and we'll take a look at this. Okay, it's been about 3 hours. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, that's solid. However, I'm going to go ahead and cut this off so there's more room for it to not build up pressure. I suspect when I cut into this, it's going to be gooey on the inside, but let's see. Well, that's actually pretty much dry throughout. Maybe we can start peeling some of this stuff off. If you feel any part that's sticky, that's going to hit air again and start to expand all over again. A little bit sticky. Let me go ahead and a little bit sticky on this side over here. So I'm going to hold off before I pull out this piece of paper, just because it can definitely expand, and if I pull a big chunk of that, I don't want it to shift everything around while it expands. So I'm going to hold off just a little bit. It's been 24 hours and this is all going to be completely cured. I suspect actually this was completely cured hours ago. You have to remember this is not completely full of foam. There's a PVC 1.5 inch PVC pipe running through here. So this was probably an hour after the last time I was here, this is probably fine. But, you know, better safe than sorry. Now I just need to pull this piece of paper out of here, which is not going to be easy. There we go. Now this stuff is very sticky, but still I don't want to just rely on it to hold everything in place. So I'm going to come in with some super glue and go all the way around. But to do that, I'm going to use, you've seen me use accelerators in the past to activate the super glue, but what you may not know is that baking soda is also a super glue accelerator or activator. And it has the special advantage of making you can sort of build up a putty of it. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but you can use it as a gap filler. You can make gussets around things. You can add a lot of extra strength by using it. So that's what I'm going to do. But I will have to flip this on its back. Let's see if I can adjust the camera. Actually, let me see if I can turn this in a way that you might be able to see a little better. Okay, so hopefully you can see in here, and you can see there's a pretty sizable gap in here. I'm going to use this saw just to clean some of the foam out around these larger gaps, just so there's plenty of room for the baking soda to go. So now I'm just going to take some of the baking soda, not baking powder, but baking soda. I'm going to kind of fill these gaps. Now I've seen people use this, at least I think it's baking soda, and make a putty out of it, but I've never been able to make that work. I don't know, maybe that's more talcum powder or something, and it's just using the powder as an aggregate. I don't know if that's the right word or not, now that I think about it. You know, basically taking the part of gravel and concrete, you know, just something to reinforce it. And I'm just take the super glue. You don't want to use the gel on this, you want to use the liquid. I just want to drip it into there. This is kind of acting gel-like. Let me see if I've got a thinner. So I've got a thinner super glue. Doesn't say that it's a gel, but it's thicker. This seems a little bit thinner. You really need the thin super glue on this, and then I had to go to the store and buy some. I didn't have the time to order it. You gotta be careful not to suck the baking soda back into the super glue container, because that'll set off your whole super glue. This is definitely thinner than the other, but it's not as thin as I would like it to be. I'm going to hit that with some accelerator, just so that I don't glue my hands to this in a second. Take a coarse sanding stick and just smooth this off a bit. But as you can see, the super glue and baking soda makes a very durable filler. I'm sure to do the opposite this time. I'm going to put some super glue into here. This might not be the best place to work on this. I need to get some paper. Learn from your mistakes. Now this area doesn't have much of a gap, so I'm just gonna run it along here and hopefully get some capillary action. Okay, let's see if I can make this a little bit more effective. Sanding stick will work fine, but not as well as, you know, a powered sanding stick. So basically I just switched from going here, the belt is going this direction. So here it was actually pulling this softer plastic up into a little ridge. So I just flipped it this way so that it would push it, you know, basically take it off of there. Okay. I guess the next thing we have here is, if you notice, there's some spacers here, and I've taken some Sintra. This is just the 1/4 inch Sintra that I used for the Boba Fett armor, and this is just a thinner Sintra, and I've cut it out with the hole saw to be the right size. Hole saws are really convenient because they come in the smaller sizes, they come in 1/8 inch sizes, so you can pretty much dial in exactly what you want. As they get bigger, you end up with just 1/4 inches, but you can still usually get pretty close to what you want. So I think we'll have, that'll go there, and then that'll go on top of that. They also have the advantage of giving you a perfectly centered 1/8 inch pilot hole in the middle, which I say 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch hole right in the middle, which I think I'm going to use to run a rod through all of this upper part here, just to give it a little bit of stability. But after those spacers, we actually have to deal with this part right here. Now this is probably the single most difficult part to find that's the right size for here. Maybe it ties with trying to figure out what to do with the double shape here. But it's just been really difficult to find something that fits this size. Years and years ago, I found these at the zoo and immediately thought about the rocket on Boba Fett, but that's just not quite right. You can almost replace this whole thing and use it, but it's just a little too big. It would work in a pinch, but if I'm trying to make it, you know, close to what's actually here, it's just too big. And then I was looking through some old stock photos or photos of the backpack, a jetpack, just trying to get the right shape and testing some other things or just comparing it to pictures. And I came across the first diagram of this that I saw. It's not quite right, but it does have things labeled, or at least some things. And it has this labeled as a gopher poison container. And so then I went online, and sure enough, I found this gopher poison. It's kind of a pain to deal with disposing of the poison peanuts that are in it and then cleaning everything up good, but it is at least the right shape. So that's how I got this. But much like these spacers, I'd like it to be more structural and have, you know, a way to center it. So I cut some more spacers out here that'll fit in the ends and make this more rigid and give me a way to center it. So let's go ahead and start working on that. Let me see if I can adjust the camera so that you can see what I'm doing now. And this one I think is going to be the harder one to get in place. It's a snug fit. So I think what we'll do here, we'll do this one first. And I'm just going to hit it with some super glue. It's kind of inevitable that I'm going to get this on my fingers. And I'm just going to drop it in place if I can. I've got this little piece, of course it went in, spun around on me. Okay, now I can use this and a hammer. So that's nice and flush. You know, instead of this, that's probably would have been a good time to go in with the baking soda to kind of fill in, you know, because this is a cone shape, baking powder would have filled in the little bit of a gap that would have been around the top of that. Hopefully I'll remember that for the actual piece. Then this piece just drops in. If you'll notice here, there's a little bit of an overlap with these pieces, so the fact that this fits inside of that doesn't bother me at all. There'll be a little bit of a gap, and I think that's going to be perfect. It's going to be a bit of a challenge to getting it level, though. Maybe a little piece of 1/4 inch rod would help. This will just let me control, you know, how flat it is. And I'll just do the same thing as before. There's no way I can do this without getting glue on my fingers. As usual, it wants to glue my fingers way more than it wants to glue the plastic. This is the size, the piece that's going to go in here, so maybe I should use that. That looks reasonably straight. I don't think there's going to be a simple way to do this. Everything I do is just, it looks okay for a second and then it looks crooked. You just have to fiddle with it until I think it's going to be okay. You know, it might actually help that is if I went all the way through to the other side. That seems okay. Now I'm going to put some of this gel in. Trying not to push down at all. I want this to be, I just realized that, you know, this piece here has to sit on top of this, so I don't want there to be big chunks of glue. I was going to put some baking soda on that, but once again I think it'll make waves that are going to make it more difficult for this piece to fit on top of it. Looking at this right now, it looks like it is totally wrong. However, this doesn't look that bad, so maybe we're okay. I'm just thinking about possible ways I could do to make this structurally more sound. One of them would be to drill holes in there, and then once I thread this onto the rod, I could fill that with expanding foam just like I did this piece. Okay, well, enough of that. Let's go ahead and, what do I want to do at this point? Let's, okay, so this is the same size as this, so I can use this to make sure that I've got a perfectly centered hole here. Now I'm going to drill a hole as straight as I can, which is probably not that straight. Down through this. Yep, I can tell that's off. And I ran into some gooey foam even at this point, so that's going to be fun to clean up, but after it dries it'll be easier. Yeah, it looks like our hole's not even close to being in the middle. That feels a little gooey in there. I wonder if maybe this is not a... This might be a good way to do this, actually. Wait for that to cure, and then I can pull this out, and that should be reasonably centered anyway. See if I can't. If you can't tell, I'm just kind of making this up as I go along. The problem is I don't want to glue this down. I mean, that's going to expand and not be good, so let's... Part of me wants to put this part on just in case it gets glued. Actually, that works better than I thought it was going to, so let's just do that. It's wanting to push up, so I need a little bit of weight on there. Okay, it's a little crazy, but I'll come back in maybe an hour. I don't know if you can actually see what I've done there. But I'll be back in maybe not an hour, maybe 30 minutes just to check on it. And then overall I'll get an hour. Okay, I actually did wait an hour. So let's see what this is like. So it was definitely stuck, so hopefully that's a reasonably clean hole. I guess what I'll do now is I'll wait a little bit. I need to go pick up dinner anyway, so I'll do that and then come back and see if that's still a clean hole or if it's filled in. We're just kind of experimenting at this point. Okay, let's see how this works now. I've got a much longer aluminum rod. Hit a little resistance there. Let's see. I'm just gonna eyeball this. Okay, it's way far forward. Okay, that's working. Still looks like it's a little far forward. Of course, I could also might need to bend this after the fact, maybe. I don't know. Okay, it looks really good from here. It looks okay from the front, maybe a little bit to the left, but not bad. Anyway, the center hole works. It's not filled with anything, so we might have to do some adjusting at some point. I get the feeling that I may have to fill some foam maybe in the bottom as well as the top. You know, this isn't even the way I'm going to do it in the final piece, so I'm just kind of messing with this to try to make it work. So our next step at this point is to go ahead and construct this little piece right here that's going to fit on the top of this piece. And I've already measured the right size of this PVC pipe, which is a 1.5 inch pipe, which on the outside diameter is just under 2 inches. I've gone ahead and measured it and marked it with a piece of tape. Unfortunately, this is slightly too big for my PVC cutters, so I'm going to have to use the bandsaw. So let's go ahead and cut this piece off. That worked out surprisingly well. That's probably the squarest cut for a PVC pipe on the bandsaw that I've managed to do. So that looks good. Now I just need to, even though this doesn't need the support, I want those center holes. So I've got a couple of pieces that I've also cut on the hole saw. And unfortunately, it doesn't work out to be a perfect fit. It's maybe a 1/64 of an inch, or, you know, it's very small amount, too small. But I think I can fix that just by using hot glue as the glue on this. And I can go ahead and put these pieces in. And I'm just going to do this how you would expect. I'm going to put hot glue around the outside of it. And I'm going to burn myself, of course. This is more difficult trying to film it than actually doing it. Okay. Now let's see if I can. It's starting to cool off faster than I can get it into place. Okay, it is slightly off being perfect. So I'm going to see if I can apply some force to this and break it loose a little bit to get it in the right place. I think I'll take a PVC in there and hit this with a hammer and see if I can't straighten it out a little bit. Okay, that's really quite close now. So I'll probably put some hot glue inside here to re-glue it. It's probably not even necessary, but can't hurt. Okay, now I just need to repeat the process with this piece. This would probably be a lot easier for you to see if I moved the camera down a little bit. So this is the piece that goes on the top. This is the piece that'll actually fit in here. I suppose this is going to be difficult because I'm not going to be able to control this from both sides. It's almost like I need another piece of PVC that was cut the exact same height that was inside there. I think maybe just go with this approach again so I can control the angles a little better. That's close enough. I think at the last second it sunk down on this side just a little bit, but that's pretty good. I'm just trying to clean off the excess hot glue. Hot glue is the most frustrating of mediums. Between burning yourself and it sticking to everything and making strings all over the place. But sometimes it's just the best glue for the job. Okay. So this will fit into here. And then we have the top part, the point at the top, which I think I'm going to actually use wood for. I can't find anything else that's a perfect cone, you know, that doesn't have a hole at the top of it. I know I can build up some MDF pieces to be high enough and then put them in a drill like we did with the left van brace on the blaster or rocket part. And you know, I can use a sander and a drill to make a perfect cone. At this point, that's what I'm leaning toward, unless I can find something else that's gonna work better. Just curious to see if this will all line up. Maybe I need to sand a little bevel into the end of this so it'll go in better. Looks like it's lined up. I just need to give it a little tap. Give it a little tap here. I think that just may be the result of that very slight angle on here and it being kind of a tight hole to begin with. It's definitely going through, it's just tight. That's looking pretty good. They could stand to be just a tiny bit looser, but you know, it's snug. And it looks to be fairly centered. I'm not seeing a lot of wobble, which is good. Okay. I'm going to see if I can't move this down a little bit, because if I put this in place, yeah, we've got a ways to go. There it goes. Now we can slide this a little easier. But before this, we actually need, I think I'm going to need to drill a 1/4-inch hole into this real quick. So let me do that. Okay, so I've drilled a 1/4-inch hole in this, same as that, just a fender washer. Now I need to bevel this end of the rod. It fits now. So that goes there. And then okay, we're getting there. Oh, sorry, you can't sit there. We're getting there. Let's move back up to the top, although we need to go a little higher this time. Okay, that is not laying flat. It's a little better. Still a little bit higher in the back. Okay, we need some little fins that go on here, and we need the top, and that's about it. I'm not going to worry about, the extra things that attach on here. I'm just going for the basic shape of it. So we're getting close. Okay, it's the next day, but the last thing I did before I stopped working yesterday was I took a 2 1/4-inch hole saw and I cut 3 of these circles out of a 3/4-inch MDF board. And then I took a 1/4-inch dowel and I drove it about a 1-inch length of it, so through the first piece and into the second piece, and I glued and drove that into there so that it's, there won't be a hole at the top of this cone. That, this is basically going to be the top piece of the rocket. So now I can just take this same little 1/4-inch piece of aluminum rod that I've been using. I give that a little whack. I don't want to break anything, where this is glued in here, but I just want that to be nice and secure. And now I can put this into a drill and we can start to shape this into a cone. So we've moved over to the disc sanding portion of my belt sanding rig here, and I have chucked this piece into my drill. This spins this direction like this, so I want to make sure that my drill is spinning this direction so that they're not, going the same direction when I'm on here. I want them to go opposite directions. And I'm going to make a lot of dust, so I've got my air shield on to, basically a dust mask and eye protection combination, so that I can protect myself from the dust. But here we go. It's going to make a lot of noise. Okay, so now that I have all the way, I've got this shape all the way to here, I'm going to change the angle a little bit so that I can put, I don't want a sharp point on here, but I want it to be close enough that I can just round that tip off. So now we're going to change the angle a little bit so that we can change this angle in a little bit sharper. And that looks pretty good. I can just round that tip off. Now that I have this part here, I can just round this off with a file or sandpaper, or with my now suddenly very sandy finger sander. And to be honest, let's put this back in the drill so I make sure this is nice and even. Nice and smooth. Now we just have to remove this. Trying to find something other than my finger to use as a fulcrum. Okay. Let's see, I need a very thin piece of dowel or something like a toothpick. Or actually, I've got the scratch awl here. So that's how deep that is. So I need to cut, you can't see it now, but I need to cut this aluminum rod. So I just need to cut this right here at this line, and I'm just going to use a hacksaw. I almost wonder if I can just snap this off. There we go. And then we're trying to round that off a little bit. Okay. And this will just slide onto there. Not easily, but. So now I just need to basically glue all these pieces down. So let's see if we can't take this apart. Okay. This is also a very tight. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this piece and this piece together. There we go. Despite not using very much glue, it managed to get onto the rod. Now I'm going to glue this lower piece and this piece together here. I want to make sure that I get it on the washer and not just the foam. And when I push this down, I want to make sure that this piece lines up with this. And that basically makes sure that this is perfectly centered. That takes care of the spacers. Now we can move on to some of these other bigger pieces. Notice that I did replace that metal washer with a slightly larger piece of Sintra. Sorry, I didn't get that on camera. I just didn't feel like the washer was quite big enough. It didn't really stick out much, and it didn't make a nice termination point for this. So the slightly bigger piece of Sintra works quite nicely. And we can move on to these other pieces. Okay, so you may have noticed that this looks a little bit different beyond the fact that I moved some foam core in the background to make it a little bit less distracting. But I also decided that this needed to have a little bit more support. I didn't like the way this was just kind of glued to the top. I was afraid it would break loose at some point under stress. So I drilled a couple of small holes here and I filled this with spray foam, and much like this. And I'll go ahead and do the same thing with this, even though this really doesn't need any support. It's got these, you know, very thick PVC and Sintra as well. So honestly, this would be overkill to fill it with foam, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. But first, let's go ahead and glue it in place on here. This was just much flimsier, and so I felt like it needed a little bit more support. I want to get the glue on the PVC part, PVC pipe part anyway. Okay. I also made this hole slightly bigger. I just went the next size up from 1/4 of an inch on my drill bits. Okay, so that's glued. And let's go ahead and fill this up with spray foam as well. And that'll make a little bit of a mess, but that's exactly what I did with the last one. I've kind of learned just to leave it. I didn't want it to be a lot on the side, but other than that, I'm just going to leave it. It'll be a lot easier to pull off once it dries. Now I could have filled that earlier, but I really wanted it to be able to stick to the rod. Honestly, like I said before, it's a bit overkill on this piece. It is not really needed, but I think it was needed for this flimsier piece here. But I'll be back in 20 or 30 minutes and take a look. It's been about 20 minutes, and let's see. Oh yeah, that's plenty. It's maybe a little soft. No, it's totally cured. Okay, I'm gonna give that about, well, honestly, if it does, I don't think I really have to worry about that coming up. Even if it is going to expand and come through, the wooden piece on top is gonna keep everything fine. I don't think it's gonna be an issue with it trying to push the wood off. So, I mean, if this was holding it in place, then I think it's gonna be fine. Should get some around the outside as well. Okay, I think we're pretty much, I mean, we're not completely done. We need to put these little pieces on the side, you know, these things here. The grappling hook is what it really is, or fins or a grappling hook. You know, on my action figure that I had before Empire Strikes Back, I was convinced it was a grappling hook. And I thought that was the coolest thing at the time because I couldn't even perceive the fact that this thing was a jetpack. Okay. We just have one thing left, and that is to put the fins that are on here. I just took my 1/4 inch Sintra and I ripped, just by eye, about 1/4 of an inch strip. And then using a 45-degree bevel, I just cut these into 3.5 inch sections, 3 of them. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what they're supposed to look like. This is my best guess from the pictures that I have. I mean, it's hard to tell if it's even 3 or 4 fins, but I think it's 3 fins. And after I cut this off at 45-degree bevels, I just sort of rounded this into a little curve, and I just, you know, rounded all the corners so they're not sharp edges. And I'm just going to glue these onto here. I'm going to measure first using this. Well, I've already measured, and I know that this is exactly 6 inches in circumference. So I cut a 2-inch long piece of tape, and I'm going to center this by eye, put this on, and now I can just mark that, mark both ends of that, put that back on, and I should be able to get all 3 marks that way, just to make sure everything is correct. Okay. Now that I have this marked, I can go ahead and place these on here. Also, it doesn't look like it's necessarily perfectly lined up in real life, or the prop itself, but I'm just kind of I'd like it to be lined up. It would bug me if I had the fins off, a little off center like that. That would bug me. So okay, I'm going to use hot glue to glue this on, just in case there's any these are flat and this is round, so the hot glue will kind of fill in any gaps that are there. I don't want to put a lot of hot glue, because the truth is these are supposed to be fit into the cone and pop out. So I'm just lining this up with the very top edge and making it look as straight as possible. And then I want to take my little knife and I want to clean off any glue that's sticking out. Because like I said, this is supposed to look like it's fitting inside here, not stuck onto the outside. Okay. Just going to move down the line. Okay, and there's one more part, which is this kind of goes into this section here as well. For this upper part, I do basically the same things I did down here, only I cut this little 1/16 of an inch roughly sliver. It's basically just the smallest piece that I could cut on the bandsaw without it breaking or anything. And then I cut 3 pieces that were almost an inch, like I don't know, maybe 7/8 of an inch long. And then I just rounded one end. That end's still 90 degrees, but this one I just kind of rounded it off. I've got 3 of these, and I'm just going to put them round side up like that along the top of each one of these fins here. I'm not sure if I want to use hot glue for that or super glue. This is thin enough that I think it can bend around here if I need it to. I'm going to start out with super glue just to see how it works. This is also just as likely to glue my fingers to the Jetpack, so is it better to, there we go. Just got my finger covered in super glue. It actually looks fairly good. Just checking to see if it was in a straight line. I don't know, is it better to get super glue all over my fingers or burn myself with hot glue? Let's try the hot glue this time. Already burning myself, and I've already got hot glue strings everywhere. Yeah, I'm thinking super glue is the better way. I'm gonna have a lot more cleanup with this. Small little pieces like this are difficult no matter what kind of glue I use, but the hot glue is just, because of the strings that it produces, it's not the way to go. Might try a different approach. I'm gonna put the glue on here. Wow, that really glued fast. Looks like my line is over here, but this definitely lines up with the fin that I've got on there, so I wonder, I don't know. I think we're okay. Is that a little easier to see? I don't know. And I think that's pretty much the last thing as far as the basic structure of this. I do need to try to figure out how I'm going to attach this onto the, what is it, the old 1960s scuba kit harness. So I have to figure that out still. But as far as the basic structure, this is pretty much it. I am going to spray paint this whole thing with just a coat of filler primer, just so it'll all be the same color and you can see the shapes better. Let's see about, let's go ahead and do that, and then I can worry about the rest of it after that. Okay, for the second time in this video, I have, I thought I was recording and I'm not. So let me once again catch you up to what I've done. Basically, I just put these pieces, which is, once again, this is just the bottom of the water bottle. I just glued those on with super glue. Just eyeballed it. And then I took a piece of scrap aluminum tubing that I cut off of here, you know, way early on in the process. And I just tried to line that up with that, and then drew a circle. And then I took my Dremel and I just kind of carved a little bit of a relief in there. Honestly, you don't have to do that, because I was looking at some video, or not this video, I looked at some photos of the bottom of the Jetpack. And it looks like it's just, there's nothing there at all. It's just the center cap and some paint that runs across in an angle. So it's, I thought it would look nice if there was some kind of relief there. We'll see. Whether or not that makes it to the final product and the real thing, I don't know. And then the last thing I've been doing is taking some caulking and filling in all of these gaps. I've done all of them except for this one last piece, so you at least get to watch that. There's not much to it, of course, just filling in the gaps just like you would with any other gaps in the piece. These are a bit larger. It's a big clump of hot glue there that I'm going to pull off. Now I could use all of this trying to fill, you know, all this volume. So I just want to get enough of it deep enough in there that it'll stay. And then I'll move to the outer surface. It's pretty rough looking, but that's okay because I'm going to smooth it all out. So I've just got some water. Dip your finger in there just for lubrication. And try to push this all smoothly into place. I'm not trying to remove the caulking with my finger. I just want to smooth it out. And I may have to go back in here afterwards and put a little bit more if it doesn't look like it's, you know, flat across. I think I need a little bit right in here. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now I just have to wait for all the caulking to cure, which is about 20 minutes. And then we can go on to go ahead and paint. I think that's the next step here. The final product, and the real one, and I may come back and do it here as well, this actually gets cut out into sort of a circle with some wings on it. There's a little vent in there. And on the actual prop, this part is cut out, and there's some plugs and switches on there, which I'm not sure are ever meant to be seen. So I haven't decided whether or not to do that or not. And I may not do either one of them on this piece. The biggest concern I have as far as cutting this out is that that aluminum rod that I put in here comes all the way down to the bottom, and I'll have to deal with that. But I might need to do that just so I can figure out those parts when I make the pattern. Okay, so I've just laid out some cardboard, laid this down. I just got some of this filler primer. It doesn't really matter. I don't have much of this, unfortunately. I just wanted to hit it with some primer just so everything would be the same color, and it'd be a little bit easier to see the shapes instead of seeing the differences in color. And we've got so little of this that it's just not wanting to cooperate. Okay, well, it's pretty clear I'm gonna have to go get some more of this. If I had any other kind of primer, I would just use that. But apparently I'm out, so I'll be right back. Okay, got a new can, and we can continue on. Now, obviously, if I was doing this on the finished product, I would have put way more fit and finish into this thing, but I just want to see what it looks like all one color. This is obviously going to take a few coats to get some of the more contrasty parts, like the writing that I've written on here, as well as some of the printing on the PVC pipes and stuff like that. But I'll put a couple of layers on here and then we'll take a look at it. So here is the finished product. I know it's extremely rough, but once again, this is just the prototype. This is just something I need to use. I can now cover this with foil and tape and cut out these pieces so I can get templates. Now, some of them, like these pieces here, I've actually already made templates for while I was making this. If you recall, this side over here is the one that's accurate. This one is not. And this isn't exactly the way the finished product's going to be, or the actual piece is going to be, because I've learned some things doing this. For instance, this whole thing is going to have to be about 2.5 inches wider, which is really kind of pushing it scale wise, but it has to be that size in order to make these angles correct. So, you know, my original measurements were off of a photograph of something, and you always get distortions in photography. So this, I have to go with the measurement, what the measurements tell me, and that is that this is about 2.5 inches too short or too narrow. It needs to be about 1.25 inches wider on each side. I've also learned, if you look at the actual photographs, this back part where these are all like 90-degree angles, everything's nice and curvy on it, which means that I'm going to need at least 2, maybe 3 layers of Sintra for the bottom so that I can get that nice curve. Probably just 2, because there's enough meat in the top part and the PVC that'll also help with the curve, but I need to be able to round off all of this stuff real nicely. Because in the actual piece, it's a gentle curve. It's not anywhere near a straight edge like this. So I have learned quite a bit. Also, whereas I have a sharp angle here and then a gentle curve here, I looked at some more photographs and it looks like it actually comes at a much longer angle here at the bottom, about 2.5 inches maybe. And so this edge is actually more like about here, and it's higher up, so there's less of an angle along here, and then it comes more sharply down here. But now that I have this, I can go ahead and make the templates, and we can actually start work on the actual piece, which will be the more familiar format, and you'll actually be able to follow directions on that one. But all in all, I'm pretty impressed with this. It's given me all the information that I need to know to make the actual one correct. I don't think I'm going to paint this. I think I can work all that out on the actual piece. So, it's been a long journey on this, but I'm glad that y'all came along with me. Once again, I don't know if I'll do this in the future as far as showing you the process of me making the actual prototypes, because honestly I think I could have made this in a couple of weeks. Although some of the parts where I was trying to figure out how I was going to do some of these pieces and getting the measurements right and finding pieces that were going to work, those actually took several weeks in themselves. So maybe this whole thing could have taken a month for me to do off of camera. But like I said before, this is giving me everything I need to know. We can go ahead and start work on the original piece, or on the final piece. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, why not go ahead and give me a thumbs up, and subscribe for that matter. While you're at it, go ahead and click that little bell so that you'll be notified of any upcoming videos. That way you'll know when the actual Jetpack build starts. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to go ahead and leave them below, and I will do my best to answer them as soon as I see them. I was really thinking that no one was watching these for a while, but y'all came through and let me know that you were watching these videos and enjoying them, so that helps quite a bit. So it really is your likes and comments that keep me motivated to keep this channel going. But until next time, thanks.